The reason why the Biden and Democrats are scared of Trump is because right now Biden only loses to one person. He beats every other Republican. He loses to Trump. The reason he loses to Trump is there has been a massive shift amongst working class, minority, and millennial voters. So these are voters who, these are voters who are voting Democratic by, in the millennial context, 25, 30, 35 points ever since they started voting in meaningful form in 2004, 2008. This was the heart of Obama's original base, but a lot of them were disappointed in Obama, so they didn't turn out in 2012. Didn't matter because older working class voters also stayed home, and so Obama was able to hold on. By the way, people who want to read about how the election fraud took place, read the August 2012 article by the New York Times, worried that the Romney machine would go out and get a bunch of mail-in ballots to defeat Obama, and they lay out all the problems with mail-in ballots that came true in 2020. Just FYI. The millennial minority working class portion is the only working class portion Democrats have left. Otherwise, it's a gentry party. It's kind of what's happening in labor as well in the UK. So it's become the party of lawyers and doctors and master's degree and sociologists and professors and teachers and government workers, and a party culturally opposed to the working class and increasingly no longer even economically aligned with the working class. But the minorities and the millennials were still there. So in 2016, Trump was this old 70-year-old, white guy tycoon with weird hair from New York, right? He wasn't someone your working class African-American, Latino, Mexican-American young girl worker in the service industry could relate to. Right now, the amazing thing with all these indictments is these indictments have converted Trump from the cartoonist villain of a comic book of rich wealth and power to the outsider underdog. He is no longer the man. He's the person that the man is trying to destroy. And so all of us and people within the minority communities, especially Puerto Rican, Mexican American, African American in the United States, know people who have been victimized by the criminal justice system. I always consider them the best jurors because they're the most likely to be victimized by a crime and the most likely to be victimized by the criminal justice system. So they'll give you a really true, fair trial. They won't be prejudiced in either direction. But that makes Trump more relatable. He's no longer the guy rap stars like Snoop Dogg and Eminem may describe as killing. Instead, he's the guy that people like Ice Cube and others are saying positive things about now because of this ongoing shift. And the main reason for the shift, so while the indictments only enhance his appeal, doesn't diminish his appeal to that voter group in particular, what it also it's all the economy. The ordinary working class younger person in America is getting absolutely crushed. So and it's about to get a lot worse because the student loan debt's coming. So they borrowed money that they can't repay for jobs that they were promised that they never got. It's problem number one. Problem number two is housing is more unaffordable in the United States than it's ever been by a percentage of income. I mean, the mortgage cost, the average mortgage cost for the average home has doubled in 2 years. Doubled in 2 years because of the combination of ridiculous price hikes and price rises, and which is partially influenced by diminished supply, which is partially because of the interest rates going up so high because the Fed still worries about the Phillips curve. They still think they got to control unemployment to control inflation rather than understand what a supply shock looks like. And then the Phillips curve was always wrong. It's just designed so bankers have an excuse to drive up inflation. In the name of driving down inflation, drive up unemployment. So, but their housing is as unaffordable as it's ever been. Their professional path is as undetermined and as unlikely to lead to success as it's ever been. The car payments right now are the highest they've ever been. The rate of rejection for people trying to get loans for cars is higher than it's ever been. The delinquency rates for credit cards and other debt is at a recent highs since the level of 2008, 2009. If they're in a small business or enterprise, they can't borrow money because the banks are squeezing credit all over the place. And in a debt-driven credit feeding economy, that's a very bad sign. Going to Jeffrey Snyder's and others' view of the global financial system and the euro dollar, et cetera. that it leads to a deflationary environment that's even worse than an inflationary environment and a debt-driven economy. So their unemployment is low because they don't have one job; they have two. The hour rates have been going down, and the part-time jobs have been rising, and the full-time jobs have been declining. There has been no meaningful recovery in the manufacturing or industrial sectors. The real estate sector is starting to struggle badly because nobody can afford a home, and the people that are in a home don't want to sell a home because they can't afford another home. People like BlackRock and others have been mass buying up real estate to put Airbnbs and everything else. That's not going anywhere, but they have such a dominant share that it's leading to declining price affordability. People who had protection under the eviction moratoriums for several years during COVID no longer have those protections. Homelessness took the biggest jump last year that it has in the recorded history of America, double-digit increase just in the places where we monitor that, not including the places where we don't monitor that. Some of that is mental illness. Some of that is other issues, but at least some portion of that dramatic increase is because there's people who can't afford housing. And so, and disproportionately, it's minority and millennial working class. Now, if you happen to be men in that category, you're doubly screwed because of the cultural phenomenon taking place right now, which is more than 2/3 of young men have no relationships, period. Because there's been this massive shift with technology and with third wave feminism to where young women's sexual accessibility expanded, but for a limited set of people. So it now looks like the world of Genghis Khan, where you have 50% of the women chasing 5% of the men, leaving 50% of the men with nobody. So people are living at home longer than ever. People are not in dating relationships, not getting married, not having families. If they do have families, they're not staying with their kids. So you've got disaster at every single level of lifestyle for an ordinary working class millennial kid. That's why they have, on average, in the public opinion polls over the last 6 months, shifted towards Trump by 20 to 30 point margins. It's why Biden can't beat Trump. The economy is killing him amongst that voter group to where they would have to just totally steal it. That's why their goal is just get him indicted, get him convicted, hope that that's enough to keep him from winning, because right now they're losing by such margins. Trump is ahead in polls that have hated him for the last 10 years by margins he has never led ever. Right now, it would be a 1984 Reagan style in terms of popular vote margins, and his electoral college margins would be in the 330s, 340s, 350s, that kind of margin. I mean, a complete, utter sweep outside even the margin fraud to normally recover from. So that's why Biden is in such trouble, and that's why it's let's try to indict Trump